and the final winner will be based on round 1 plus round 2 scores. And as Umesh said earlier, round 1 had a higher weightage on the content because the main purpose was the content. But in this round, it's an equal weightage for content, quality, and creativity. So the top 5 are in alphabetical order of first name. Niharika Dar. Yeah, I guess the agreement is we'll just play the videos of they have their own introductions there. So we'll start with the introduction and play the video. So the top 5 videos.
एक ही बोल रहे पहले स्टार्टिंग ओनली फर्स्ट चलेगा क्या चलाएगा ना मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा तो he has to wait
मेरा कहना था कोई अपना हमारे तो 3 लोगों को मैंने उठा कर दिया चेक डिलीवर होता है तो बस सिंगल पे
Huh?
Can you your light come for the light? Light for mini Can you please be quiet? Volume. Make us start.
So we were inspired to undertake this video project because we've been going to these history, social gatherings, and events for many years now, and we wanted to get to know the people a little bit better, as well as explore our roots in history.
A little bit of context surrounding the Hindu-Muslim relations. We hear so much about it in contemporary times, but we don't really hear a lot. We don't really hear a lot about how, the origin of that conflict or why those relations exist. So learning about Shaka, University, I'm 20 years old and I live in Virginia.
I'm Knuckle, I'm 17. I just graduated from South Joseph High School in Virginia, where we live, and this is our lab. So we were inspired to undertake this video project on history because we've been going to these history, social gatherings, and events for many years now, and we wanted to get to know the people a little better, as well as our roots in history.
I think the biggest thing that we learned from this project is a little bit of context surrounding the Hindu-Muslim relations we hear so much about in Kashmir in contemporary times. But we don't really hear a lot. We don't really hear a lot about the origin of that conflict or why those relations exist. So learning about Kashmir and the dynasty that you brought about really gave us a lot of important context into those Hindu-Muslim relations. And I think we both can agree that we learned a lot from completing it. Thank you.
Welcome to the first episode of Kashmiri Fun and History.
To our viewers in the West, we say hello. To our viewers in the East, we say namaskar. I am your host, Naharika.
Or Myonav Chernaklo. In today's episode, we will be discussing Shamir, the first ruler of the Shamir dynasty of Kashmir.
Our story begins in the year 1300 in the Kashmir Valley.
As was the fate of many states at the time, the Mongols arrived, and they were hungry. The king of the valley was a man named Suhadeva. Suhadeva was an unpopular ruler who levied high taxes on all Kashmiri citizens, including the Hindu Brahmins, and inefficiently protecting Kashmir's permeable borders. Under these circumstances, a Mongol from Turkestan named Zoju found Kashmir ripe for attack. Although this was not the first Mongol attempt to conquer Kashmir, it was certainly one of the most devastating. Zoju's army entered Kashmir through the relatively unguarded Jhelum Valley Road. Although Suhadeva tried to placate Zoju by offering him money in exchange for his retreat, Zoju did not yield and continued his onslaught.
In response to this refusal, the frightened king fled to Kashmir, and Kashmiris were left to face the Mongol invaders on their own. The Kashmiri population was devastated, with the Mongol army burning down homes and buildings and massacring innocent men and women. Ramachandra, who had been the king's commander-in-chief, was one of the few officials who attempted to hold some semblance of authority in the valley. He was able to keep a fort in the district of Lar partially safe and protect the town's inhabitants.
The onslaught continued for 8 long months, ending only when winter hit, and the Mongol invaders realized they lacked the resources they needed to survive.
As the inhabitants of the valley who had fled the violence began to return home, anarchy started to prevail, with local chiefs becoming independent rulers. To make matters worse, a devastating famine hit the valley.
A power vacuum also formed in the valley due to the lack of an organized government. Many started to aspire to be the next ruler. And in 1320, one man who began to gain traction in achieving this was Rinchana.
Rinchana was the son of a Ladakhi chief. After his family was killed by his political adversaries, Rinchana found himself in unfavorable political circumstances at home, forcing him to leave for Kashmir.
He entered Kashmir through the Zojila Pass and reached the village of Gaganbir. He settled there with permission from Ramachandra, to whom the place belonged. Ramachandra employed Rinchana as an administrator. Over time, Rinchana gained power and influence. After the withdrawal of Zoju, he, like many others, including his boss and the former commander-in-chief Ramachandra, began to eye the throne of Kashmir.
To make this aspiration a reality, Rinchana devised a ruse to undermine Ramachandra's influence. He sent his Ladakhi followers in the guise of wool clothing merchants to the Lar fort, where they entered on the pretext of trade with hidden weapons, taking Ramachandra's men by surprise. Rinchana then attacked the fort and killed and defeated Ramachandra, putting the leader's family in prison. Since no one was strong enough to challenge him, Rinchana occupied the throne in 1320.
However, Rinchana was no fool. He realized that because he was an outsider, he needed the goodwill of Kashmiris to continue to ensure stability.
As a result, he befriended the imprisoned son of Ramachandra, Ramachandra, released him from prison, gave him the title Raina, meaning Lord or Master, and made him his own commander-in-chief. He also married Ramachandra's daughter, Kodarani.
Although Rinchana was born Buddhist, he yearned for a better understanding of the truth. This spiritual vacuum led him to come into contact with a Sufi saint named Saeed Shafruddin, better known as Bulbul Shah. Bulbul Shah had traveled to Kashmir from Turkestan and was one of the first Sufi saints to visit the valley. He is said to have converted over 10,000 Kashmiris to Islam.
Rinchana was so impressed by the saint that he too converted to Islam and adopted the name Sadruddin. His brother-in-law, Ramachandra, Kodarani's brother, also converted. This new royal patronage afforded to Islam gave it some new converts in the valley, and also expectedly concerned some of the Hindu Brahmins living there.
Rinchana also built the first mosque in Kashmir on the banks of the Jhelum River, near his palace. It was destroyed in a fire, but eventually rebuilt.
Kind of like Shakespeare's Globe Theatre?
Yeah, except somehow we never learned about ancient Kashmiri architecture in school.
Sad. Richanda actually died in 1323 from a surprise attack headed by his own former Prime Minister, Tukka. Ultimately, while Richanda was often a harsh and strict ruler, his governance rested on a system of law and order. He was a relatively able leader and did try to bring peace to a land which had seen quite a bit of chaos and turmoil.
Richanda left behind one son, Haider, under the guardianship of Shamir, his trusted counselor. This child's mother, Kotarani, ruled on his behalf.
However, there was a legitimate fear that a state without a sovereign might lapse again into anarchy. Clearly, a woman couldn't be expected to run a country, even though Kotarani had already done so for so many years.
To overcome this blatant gender discrimination, Kotarani recalled Udayanadeva, who was the brother of the former ruler Suhadeva from Swat, where he had been living since Zulju's invasion. Kotarani married him and granted him the title of king.
However, Udayanadeva served only as a figurehead, and effectively, Kotarani was a real ruler. After he fled during an attempted Turk invasion, Udayanadeva faced even more loss of prestige in the valley because of his cowardly act, and ultimately he led a secluded life with little interest in public affairs.
When Udayanadeva died, Kotarani had two sons, one by Rinchanda under the guardianship of Shamir, and another by Udayanadeva, who was under the guardianship of a man named Bhatta Bhiksana.
There lies the million-dollar question. Who was to become king? The ambitious Kotarani decided to ignore the claims of both of her sons and assumed the reins of the government for herself. Why did she do this? While the queen was a fairly politically ambitious woman herself, another important motivating factor was a man known as Shamir.
Shamir's ancestry is shrouded in myth. Some claim he is descended from the heroes of the Mahabharata, the Pandavas. As that is my namesake, I'm inclined to agree with them.
As much as Nakul might want to think that his namesake is what Shamir originated from, a more likely theory was that Shamir's family was of Turkish origin. Shamir's father was a man named Tahir, and his grandfather was a man named Waqir Shah, who was a very devout Muslim. Since the end of the 11th century, Turkish people like Shamir had traveled to Kashmir in search of work. Typically, they were treated with respect by the Hindu kings, who employed them in their armies.
Similarly, in 1313, Shamir came to the valley with his tribe in search of employment. Suhadeva, who was then ruling Kashmir, gave him a village near Baramulla as Jagir. No, not the 1984 Bollywood classic, the type of feudal land grant. While it is uncertain what role Shamir played during the Mongol invasion and Rinchanda's rise to power, it appears that he must have helped him in his struggle against Ramachandra.
Under Udayanadeva's rule, Shamir cooperated with Kotarani in organizing resistance to a Turkish invasion, which considerably increased the prestige and popularity in Kashmir, as he successfully had saved the Kashmiris from a fate they had been subjected to just a few years ago. He also entered into politically motivated matrimonial alliances with important feudal chiefs to consolidate his position. If he couldn't marry a chief's daughter, he played the chiefs against one another.
His growing popularity upset Udayanadeva, who was jealous of the power Shamir wielded in his kingdom. Shamir, on the other hand, was so confident in his own ability that he managed to ignore Udayanadeva's apprehension.
When Kotarani ascended to the throne, she was alarmed by Shamir's ambition and growing power. Consequently, she appointed Bhatta Bhiksana as prime minister to oppose him. She also transferred the capital city from Srinagar to Underkot because of Shamir's popularity in Srinagar.
Shamir was angered by Kotarani's purposeful exclusion and decided to overthrow her and Bhiksana. He succeeded by means of conspiracy to assassinate Bhiksana.
He then asked Kotarani to marry him and share power, threatening war if she didn't agree.
Kotarani rejected his proposal, for she did not want to marry a person who had worked for her. Being politically ambitious, she also did not want to share power. This meant war.
Shamir and his army set out from Srinagar towards Underkot and laid siege to Kotarani's fort. As more and more important chiefs sided with Shamir and her own forces started to dwindle, Kotarani decided to surrender and accept his proposal.
Here's where the story gets a little hazy. One story suggests that Shamir, now ruling under the title Sultan Shamsuddin, married Kotarani, but did not trust her because she had only consented under duress. Since she still possessed some popularity in the valley, the newly crowned king was said to have remained concerned about her and imprisoned her along with her two sons.
However, there's also a slightly more disturbing story. That story goes that instead of marrying Shamir, Kotarani preferred to stab herself and offer her intestines to the new king.
Yikes.
After Kodarani's death, Shah Mir was the lone ruler of Kashmir.
Hey, what do you call a banana that's alone?
I don't know.
A kela.
Oh god, I hope that's the only joke you have.
Alright, back to the story. Sultan Shamsuddin ruled for 3 years. During his reign, he tried to heal the wounds left by the Mongol invasion and months of misrule. He abolished extra taxes, reduced the severity of some oppressive laws and regulations, and tried to keep the feudal chiefs in check.
He also ushered in a new era called the Kashmir era in the place of the Laukika era that had come before it. This new calendar began with Rinchana's accession to the throne and his subsequent conversion to Islam. The new calendar continued to be used throughout the Sultanate period and ended only when the Mughals took control of the valley.
Ultimately, Shah Mir came to Kashmir in search of power and fortune, and was able to successfully take advantage of the political disorder to not only rise to power, but he also founded a long-lasting political dynasty. Under Shah Mir, the situation in Kashmir was relatively calm for Hindus living in the valley.
However, Shah Mir died in 1342, leaving his kingdom to his 2 sons, Shamshid and Aluddin Sher. Both ruled in succession after the death of their father.
Shah Mir's enthronement ingrained Islam as the major religion in Kashmir and laid the foundation for a 222-year dynastic rule in the valley. The situation for Hindus varied during this time period, depending on who was the current ruler at the time.
Overall, however, royal patronage of Islam added to Kashmir's rich religious past and complexity. There was a slow but steady movement of Muslims and Islamic beliefs into the valley starting from this period, and this resulted in almost all Kashmiris, except for the high-class Hindu Brahmins, now typically known as Pandits, adopting Islam. This means that life for a Kashmiri Pandit during this time period meant clinging on to your beliefs, despite all of the change that was occurring around you. Shah Mir's rule entrenched Islam as a major religion in Kashmir. All rulers of Kashmir after Shah Mir were Muslim, either Mughals or Afghans, up until the year 1818, when the Sikh kingdom captured the region and ruled until 1846.
Although there were many rulers who held power during the Shah Mir dynasty, 2 are especially important to Kashmiri Pandit history. 1, Sultan Shirababuddin, ruled from 1354 to 1373. He is known for being a very efficient conqueror, leading the Kashmiri army to annex many neighboring lands under the leadership of both Hindu and Muslim commanders. Shirababuddin was also a capable ruler and a fair administrator, promoting religious tolerance and treating the Hindu population charitably. Another important ruler was Sultan Zayn al-Abidin. This king was known for reversing previous administration's persecutions of Brahmins and Hindu practices. He was also a great patron of the arts, and a significant amount of Kashmiri painting, literature, and music was produced under his rule.
During the Shah Mir dynasty, a stream of Muslim immigrants from Central Asia and Persia came to the Kashmir Valley. These immigrants included Sufi saints like Bulbul Shah, artisans, and people fleeing from conquest. These early immigrants were influential in shaping the cultural life of Kashmiris, who were mostly Hindu or Buddhist at the time period. This, in conjunction with the royal patronage of Islam, led to some concerned reaction in the Brahminite community during this period of time. Particularly, there was a great concern for the preservation of the Brahmin identity during this early medieval period. While there was some conflict, assimilation also occurred with the passage of time. For instance, in order to find a place in the new administrative setup, Brahmins adapted themselves to the study of Persian and found work as government translators and administrators. Persian became so popular with some of the pundits that they often composed hymns and prayers in the Persian language. As time went on, Kashmiri Pandits, as the Brahmins came to be known, once again began to claim a higher position within the social order.
Which brings us to today. During the Sultanate period, the introduction of Islam into the ruling class and the conversion of many Kashmiri Hindus to Islam did create distinct identities between the Kashmiri Pandit and the Kashmiri Muslim communities. Nevertheless, this period was also responsible for developing a unique society in Kashmir that was distinctly Kashmiri, in a way not solely defined by geography. Even though Shah Mir only ruled for a short 3 years, the enduring legacy of his reign is hard to match. Kashmir today is more than just food or a language. It is a sense of cultural history and self-identity that each and every Kashmiri Pandit carries within themselves. The Kashmiri Pandit community was forever changed by the Shah Mir dynasty. For Kashmiri Pandit history,
I'm Naharika,
and Nakul,
signing off.
तो वह बोल वीडियो अच्छा
Namaskar, my name is Sanaya Azad.
And my name is Rahul Rajan.
I'm 20 years old and I'm going to be a junior at Cornell University studying operations.
I'm 16 years old and I'm going to be a junior in Shirley High School.
So we decided to participate in this competition primarily because of our parents. But at the end of the day, it was a really great learning experience.
One second. We want So we're going to give 1 minute break between the presentations so judges can contemplate. 1 minute, just
We can maybe take most of ourselves.
one. Just a second, we are starting. All right, we're continuing. We're not taking break. We're continuing. Sorry.
Namaskar, my name is Sanaya Azad.
And my name is Rahul Rajan.
I'm 20 years old and I'm going to be a junior at Cornell University studying operations. Decided to participate in this competition primarily because of our parents. But at the end of the day, it was a really great learning experience. We got to, actually get to learn more about all of the exhibitions. Didn't even know there were 7.
And also it sort of brings us back to where we come from and our roots, and it really feels nice to know more about the history of where we came from and what our parents had to go through the 7th Exodus. Thank you.
The 7 Exoduses of Kashmir, a tragedy of incomprehensible magnitude. The 7 Exoduses of Kashmir, a tragedy of incomprehensible magnitude. Named after Kashyap Rishi, Kashmir started as a land of great natural beauty and religious harmony. From the mountains to the valleys to the lakes, there were no words to describe its beautiful landscape other than paradise on earth. One can only experience the serenity and peace found in Kashmir's borders. Despite its beauty, Kashmir has been torn apart time and time again, primarily by religious and political conflicts. Fast forwarding to the present, Kashmir is known to be in a state of perpetual turmoil, and frequent riots and protests plague the once peaceful land of Kashmir. The first Exodus of Kashmir. This exodus lasted from 1389 to 1413. It all started with Shah Mir, who laid the groundwork and the foundation of Muslim rule in Kashmir. He not only killed people who resisted the spread of Islam, he also allowed intermarriage between Hindus and Muslims, thereby weakening the households and the precious culture of Kashmiri Pandits. Shah Mir was soon after followed by Taimur the Lame. He, along with his followers, drove a huge wedge between the majority Hindus and the minority Muslims. In fact, Taimur even persuaded the Sultan at the time, or the king, to make it law to persecute Kashmiri Pandits. Following soon after him came Sultan Sikandar, also known as Sikandar Batshikin. He followed in the footsteps of Taimur the Lame and the sultans that had preceded him in forcing people to convert to Islam, desecrating many Hindu temples, and murdering the others. In order to preserve their precious Hindu culture and the traditions and culture of Kashmiri Pandits, many people had to fled their homes once again. As a result, after the first exodus of Kashmir, only only 11 Kashmiri Pandit families stayed in Kashmir. Next up is the second exodus of Kashmir, which lasted from 506 to 1585. During the second exodus of Kashmir, the Chufs came into power. Now the Chufs were a group that had become a part of the army when Shah Mir came into power in Kashmir. The Chufs gained power by crushing their political rivals by murder and conspiracies. They were no less ruthless than the rulers who had come before them. Fatah Khan, from 1506 to 1516, with Shams Chak and Musa Rena, who were his prime ministers, demolished many Hindu places of worship and tried to remove all traces of infidelity and idol worship from Kashmir. This was also known as the Dark Ages, or the Dark Period in Kashmiri history, because it was the ruthless era of the Chaks. The Chaks were actually Shia Muslim, whereas the rulers who had come before them were Sunni. They, like the others, forcibly converted many Brahmin families to Islam. Although the Kashmiri Pandits had some hope in Pandit Nirmal Khan, a scholar, and sent a plea to Musa, the prime minister at the time, he was ruthless and pitiless and threw them in jail. Qazi Chak, the next prime minister, was even more ruthless. He persecuted 900 Kashmiri Pandits every day. In order to forcibly convert some of the Hindus, he force-fed them beef so that they, in order to live with themselves, had to convert to Islam. Moreover, thousands of cows were slaughtered every week just because the Muslims knew that Hindus worship cows. As a result of this, of all the violence, and of all the punishments for being Hindus, there was a massive exodus, where many Kashmiri Pandits once again fled to never return. The spread of Islam in Kashmir continues. Now came the third exodus under the Mughal Empire, from 1585 to 1750. It all started with Akbar the Great, who was known for being a very humane and liberal emperor. Akbar embraced the idea of letting religions coexist and allowed Kashmiri Pandits to come back into Kashmir and worship their religion freely. Not only that, he removed the jizya, or the fair tax, that was imposed on Kashmiri Pandits during the reigns before. Just when Kashmiri Pandits started to feel back at home in their own homeland of Kashmir, came his son, Jahangir Khan. He did not believe in the same religious tolerance that Akbar had believed in. With him, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb were also interested in the torture and mass extermination of Kashmiri Pandits. Aurangzeb, one of the most ruthless leaders, immediately acted upon converting all of India to Islam, including Kashmir. He used violence and reimposed the jizya, or the poll tax, that Akbar had removed. The first step that Aurangzeb did was to exterminate all Hindu scholars, because he believed that they would slow down the process of conversion. Thousands of Kashmiris were converted to Islam or moved to neighboring regions to continue practicing Hinduism. As you can see, the overall trend of all the exoduses were that certain Muslim leaders came into power and as a result crushed the Kashmiri Pandits' religions and culture by either forcefully converting them to Islam, killing them, or leaving them with no option other than to flee their beloved homes. This trend continued in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th exoduses. Now comes the 4th exodus of Kashmir in 1753, which was under the rule of the Afghan governors. Fazl Khan, one of the leaders, continued the mass extermination of Kashmiri Pandits, which led the Kashmiri Pandits to once again flee the safety of their homes to Poonch and Kabul. Kashmiri Pandits were physically tortured in the most ruthless fashion and had to suffer much emotional and spiritual anguish. The 4th exodus came to an end when the 6th finally captured Kashmir, ending the rule of the ruthless Afghan governors and bringing a little bit more peace. Now came the 5th exodus of Kashmir, which took place in the early 1900s. Due to Pandit Birbal's help, Maharaja Ranjit Singh was able to re-establish a Hindu government in the J&K state after the Sikhs took over Jammu and Kashmir. This was a period where all religions were able to coexist in harmony. Many other Muslim rulers in India started rising up and forming an organization which met weekly and later became known as the Muslim Reading Room. They were annoyed that educated Kashmiri Pandits lived comfortable lives and held high positions in the government. As a result, on July 13, 1931, later known as Black Day, was a grave day for all Kashmiris. Kashmiri Muslims looted and murdered many people and properties in Srinagar. As a result, after this, the Dogra rulers came into power, and Kashmiri Pandits no longer had any rights. After independence was granted to India from the British, even though the entirety of the nation was celebrating the victory of independence, Kashmiri Pandits were unable to do so because Pakistan launched an attack on Kashmir. Once again, thousands of Kashmiris had to leave their homes to seek refuge in Srinagar. The post-independence period in Jammu and Kashmir led to an unmistakably slow and steady exodus of the Kashmiri Pandit community. And this was primarily due to the fact that Kashmiri Pandits simply had no rights, privileges, or opportunities anymore in Kashmir. Here is an actual account of what happened in 1947.
In 1947, my father stayed at his house while the rest of our family shifted to some Muslim friend's house. In the morning, my father advised his friend to run away, but he didn't listen, which later costed him his life. My father, as he was running away, was caught by the terrorists, only to narrowly escape by handing over keys to the terrorists. While this occurred, a number of villagers were put in line and shot dead. There was a horrific incident where a baby was later found feeding from his dead mother. Some members jumped from 3 stories in order to escape. They were all cremated together in a sun lawn where flowers were grown until the next exodus in 1990.
As horrifying as the events of the 5th Exodus were, they pale in comparison to the events of 6th and 7th Exoduses. During the 6th Exodus, the ruling of Gul Shah was one of the worst, as there were the most amount of curfew days ever. Gul Shah was eventually nicknamed Gul Curfew because of this. A number of Kashmiri Pandits protested, resulting in lots of violence and the destruction of temples by Muslims. Because of this, the Kashmiri Pandits understood 2 things. One, that Kashmir has only become a land for Kashmiri Muslims and was no longer safe for the Kashmiri Pandits. And that, 2, the peaceful insights that Bapu showed India were unfortunately very short-lived in Kashmir. And now for the 7th and final exodus of Kashmir, which is ongoing and has never actually officially ended. 350,000 Kashmiri Pandits fled in 1990, leaving behind everything they had, believing in a culture that was more than 5,000 years old. Brainwashing and instigating the Kashmiri youth, Pakistan laid a trap of making Kashmir independent, and thus resulting in lots of violence. Advocate Tika Lal Tapru, followed by Justice Neelkant Ganju, and many others, tried to take a stand for the Kashmiri Pandits. Unfortunately, many Kashmiri Pandits suffered brutal torture, where red-hot knives were touched to their eyes, their tongues were pulled out and cut in half with scissors, youths were kidnapped, tortured, shot with multiple bullets, and then were thrown into the Jahannam River. One lady was ripped apart into 2 with a saw, threatening letters were pasted on doors and temples to either Salu, Galu, Yarali, which means to run, die, or accept Islam. There was a saying at this time that Kashmir mein agar rehna hai, Allahu Akbar kehna hai. The 7th Exodus in Kashmir is still not officially over, with Kashmir still in a state of political and religious turmoil. The struggle continues for the thousands of Kashmiri Pandits all over the world.
Namaskar. मेरा नाम शीतल रैना. I am 12 years old and I am going into 7th grade. I live in Edison, New Jersey. I'd like to thank KOA for holding this history competition. I participated in this competition because I love history and I feel like it's never too late to bring back a thing that we all forgot about. Brothers and I always turn silly videos into movies, so this project was both meaningful and fun for us. At first, I was debating as to if I should make a cartoon movie or a documentary, but I figured that if I make a cartoon movie, it will reach out to more than just kids. Adults like cartoon movies too. Kids both love kings and cartoons, so love the video will reach out to a bigger audience. This project helped me learn about my identity as well as Kashmir itself. I also realized that one has to do critical analysis when reading history. This is my history book. Before this project, I used to believe everything that was written here. However, I realized that not everything that is written in here can be taken as is. For example, one line says they, the Aryans, spoke an Indo-European language called Sanskrit. After researching for this project, I realized that Sanskrit cannot originate from Indo-European languages. This is my Sanskrit. At first, I found However, once my chachu gave me this and I started reading it, I found it very interesting as well. I want to thank my brothers for they helped me throughout this project. Me and my brothers have tons of bloopers. What were you doing? I believe I can touch the sky. Back to your and you all guys. You stop.
इसका इंट्रोडक्शन भी डालिए बस हाँ
Volume.
Go back.
I think you both know. Lalitha Vidya was the greatest king of all. Lalitha what? I think Alexander the Great was the best king in history. That's why he's known as Alexander the Great. No, you're wrong. Joseph II was the best king in history. He was the most unselfish king. I think you both know. Lalitha Vidya was the greatest king of all. Lalitha what? Lalitha Vidya. He was known as the youngest king of Kashmir. How do you know? His stories were mentioned in Kalhan's Rajtarangi, the first historian of Kashmir. Ooh, cool name. Do you want to find out more about him? Sure. Kashmir, the northern Himalayan region of the Indian subcontinent, got its name from Kashyap Rishi. In the 8th century, Karkota Empire established themselves as rulers of Kashmir. Kashmir grew as an imperial power under the Karkotas. The dynasty was established by Bharata. Chandrapira was succeeded by Lalitha Vidya Muktapira. While in Tibet, the Tibetans were training for invasion, and on the western front, the Arabs were planning for plunder. Gold and riches await us in Hindustan. They are ours for taking. On to Hindustan! But someone was ready to save India from these barbarians. Lalitha Vidya had a wise and alert advisor named Mitra Sharma. Maharaj, Romani has sent one division of his army to guard north. It is marching towards our city with the other. Good. That will make our task easier. We shall attack him and make sure he thinks twice before setting foot on our soil again. Mamuni thought that he could defeat Laladitya in no time and conquer Kashmir, but little did he know that Laladitya himself led the attack. The valiant Kashmiri soldiers routed the barbarians in no time. He proved himself to be the dynasty's strongest leader. Mitra Sharma, all celebrations must cease now. If Kshatriya's sword remains unused for long, it gathers rust. Laladitya realized that by his conquest, he can bring small kingdoms together to make one united front against Arabs and Tibetans. His expansions were thoughtful and not just barbaric expansions. Laladitya's Digvijay began with the subjection of the hill tribes. Glory to Laladitya! Laladitya's Digvijay began with the subjection of the hill tribes of Kashmir, like the Danakas, the Kambojas, and the Tukharas. In the land of the Tukharas were Turks. Laladitya came across an extremely intelligent Turk Buddhist named Jankun. Will you become one of my ministers, Jankun? It would be an honor to serve a monarch like you, Laladitya. After this campaign, Laladitya turned his attention towards the kings of the plains, of whom Yashovarman, the king of Kannauj, was the most powerful. Our armies are well matched, Mr. Sharma. We have the upper hand, no doubt, but the soldiers of Kannauj are by no means warriors. Isn't it a pity that they have to be slain? That lies in our hands. As I declared war, so shall I call for peace, Mr. Sharma? A messenger carried Laladitya's peace proposals to the opposite camp. Yashovarman of Kannauj was the most powerful king of central India. He was a brave warrior, and he has the credits of crushing the Tibets when they tried to move against central Indian kingdoms. Although he fought well, but Laladitya was unstoppable. I am a messenger. Laladitya urges you to sign a treaty of peace and friendship to put an end to this wanton bloodshed. You will hear from us tomorrow. You may go now. Later, when Yashovarman conferred with his general, Dear generals, Laladitya has a powerful army, no doubt, but he lacks the will to fight. That may be true, Maharaj, but our army may not be able to hold out much longer. Ministers, what do you suggest? Let us sign a treaty, Maharaj. I will draft it to our advantage. The next day, Yashovarman sent the treaty with the messenger. This being the treaty of the peace concluded between Maharaja Yashovarman and Maharaja Laladitya. I beg your pardon, Minister. Shouldn't it read between Maharaja Laladitya and Maharaja Yashovarman, our emperor being the more powerful of the two? The request for a treaty came from him. His name could not go first. Then I must have a word with the Emperor Laladitya before we proceed any further. Our proposal stands withdrawn. Let the battle continue and let it to be fought to the finish. The proposal was withdrawn. The battle between Laladitya and Yashovarman continued. Yashovarman was defeated and then taken captive. Our emperor now becomes the overlord of all kings who accepted Yashovarman's suzerainty. Jonathan is right. They might consider themselves independent now. We must march out and establish our authority. Bengal was overrun without a fight. After conquering Orissa and annexing all the territory as far as the eastern sea, Laladitya turned southwest, where Queen Raka of Karnataka surrendered without offering any resistance. I am grateful for you, gracious Queen. By your act, you have prevented unnecessary loss of lives. Jankun, our presence here merits a memorial, a unique memorial. Leave it to me, Maharaj. I shall begin work on it at once. Jonathan chose to build a temple in which he employed a rare device. The idol lies mid-air. It's a miracle.
It is no miracle. The pull of two powerful magnets, one in the roof and the other in the floor, keep the idol suspended in midair. The idol represents Lord Versemha, killing the Asura, hidden in Ashram.
Neither on the earth nor the sky, marvelous. From Karnataka, Lalitaditya turned northwards. On the homeward march, he annexed the kingdoms on the Konkan and Dwarka on the western coast. A tedious march further northwards brought Lalitaditya's forces to the borders of the Great Desert.
The stronghold of the desert chief lies straight ahead, but this desert is deadly, Maharaj. That will take us over 100 days. There is a short and safe road right through the desert, but it is not known to me. We will leave our elephants behind. Water is scarce even along the long route.
We have an arduous journey ahead of us. Water the animals and let the soldiers take some rest. The camp was pitched, and the attendants watered the horses and elephants. The next morning,
Who is that staggering out of the desert? Let us go and find out. Please take me to King Lalitaditya immediately.
why are you here and in this condition?
I am Dharmapriya, the minister of the desert chief. I advise my king to surrender to you in his own interest.
How did you survive?
The thirst for revenge has kept me alive. With my help, you can defeat him with ease. There is a little-known route through the desert. With my guidance, you can take the enemy by surprise in 15 days.
Should we accept Dharmapriya's offer, Chandra?
He is a stranger. I will be cautious, Maharaj.
Dharmapriya led Lalitaditya's army into the desert. However, on the 15th day,
We have run out of water, but the end of the desert is nowhere in sight.
Dharmapriya, 15 days have gone by. How far is it from here?
Do you mean the realm of my chief, or the realm of the jaws of death? Oh, comfort of the world, I mutilated myself to trick you into entering the jaws of death. I am loved by my master, and I am willing to lay down my life to save his. But who will save you, O Emperor of the world?
I will kill the deceiver. No, you will not. I admire his loyalty to his chief. I am invincible. It is you who will be without a savior for all your loyalty. In the next few days, the scorching heat of the desert started taking its toll. At the foot of the sand dune, something caught Lalitaditya's attention. He saw dry blades of grass. Lalitaditya hurled a spear into the ground with all the force he could muster. A few particles of sand were stuck to the blade of the spear. Lalitaditya made the soldiers dig up the ground. The soldiers jumped in joy, for they found water. Having quenched their thirst, Lalitaditya's soldiers marched out of the desert with renewed vigor. Stunned to see them come through the desert alive, the chief meekly surrendered himself. Lalitaditya roared, "Now on to Punjab, my men!" The campaign had been a long one, and his men were weary, but Lalitaditya was relentless. He led them until they came to a river. But Lalitaditya had no intention of letting a mere river come between him and the successful completion of his Digvijay. He asked Jangud how to get across the river, and in reply, Jangud said, "I will find a way." Jangud marched upstream and found the shallow point of the river. He said, "I was right. The army can cross at this point." After carefully testing the narrow, shallow stretch, Jangud led the army across the river. Taken by surprise, the Raja offered no resistance whatsoever. Having fulfilled his dream with a minimum of bloodshed, Lalitaditya returned to Kashmir. In Kashmir, Lalitaditya spotted ill-fed farmers. When Lalitaditya reached the farmers' fields, he asked Jangud if he could invent a device that would irrigate the fields. device that Jonkin had in mind were Persian mules built on riverbanks to lift water to the fields. The problems of the farmers were solved, and the farmers realized that Lalataditya has foresight and a fine sense of priorities. Later that day, Lalataditya was brought up with some bad news. The Tibetans were planning to attack them. So, Lalataditya marched to the inhospitable land of Tibet, and in one fierce fray, wiped out any dreams of conquest they might harbor. While Lalataditya was away in the land of the Tibetans, Mumuni, the Arab king, advanced to Butch. Now he was planning to attack him. Mumuni's army could not withstand Lalataditya's well-trained army. Let them go. They are not willing to fight. Besides, a true Kshatriya does not attack the dwellings of people. Our Dharma forbids it. Jonkin was right. Mumuni returned again and again. Lalataditya had to fight 3 battles before he could finally subdue them. Lalataditya spent his entire life in relentless crusades to protect his land, its people, and its culture. Lalataditya created a beautiful capital named Bani Hasper, located near Srinagar. He built the Sun Temple, which was an excellent example of Kashmiri architecture. Before taking sannyas, he gave his crown to his son Devalivida. He came to the throne at a time when the country needed him. He successfully defeated invaders. He brought everything together under the sway of one authority, the benevolent throne of Kashmir. We owe a great deal to this amazing king.
Namaskar, my name is Suraj Pandit. I'm 14 years old and I'm going in 9th grade. I'm from Houston, Texas. I really wanted to do this and participate in this competition because I have an interest in history and I thought it'd be nice to learn about the history of my ancestors. I've learned a great deal about King Harsha, who is a prominent king in Kashmiri history. My name is Suraj Pandit, and today I will be giving a presentation about King Harsha of Kashmir. The long history of the Kashmir Valley, which spans over more than 5,000 years, may be divided into the following 7 historical periods. First came the Hindu period, which lasted for more than 3,000 years. Following that was the Muslim period, which lasted for about 200 years. After that came the Mughal period, which lasted for about another 200 years. Following that was Afghan rule, which lasted for less than a century. Then came Sikh rule, and then Dogra rule, which lasted for about a century. Following that was the post-accession rule, starting in 1947 and continuing to the present day. During the Hindu period, there were 4 dynasties: the Kushan dynasty, the Karkuta dynasty, the Utpala dynasty, and the Lahora dynasty. Harsha was born in 1059 AD. He was the king of the Lahora dynasty and ruled Kashmir from 1089 to 1101 AD. Nara, the king of Dharmabhisara, was the founder of the Lahora dynasty. His descendant was Chandana. Chandana had a son named Siddharaja. From Siddharaja sprung Udayaraja and Kamtiraja. Udayaraja was the ancestor of Harshadeva, whereas Kamtiraja was the ancestor of Uchala and Susala, 2 distant cousins of Harshadeva. This is an ancient map of the Kashmir Valley. As you can see, there is a city called Parispura, which means city of pleasures. Parispura is located nearby modern-day Srinagar, and it was also the capital from which the legendary Kashmiri king, Lal Tadatia Muqtabid, ruled. The last years of King Kala Shah were constrained by distrust and misgivings between him and his son Harsha. Harsha was a youthful prince inclined to overindulgence and associated with people of questionable character. His father didn't approve of his extravagance and didn't provide him adequate allowances to meet his spendthrift lifestyle. This irritated the prince, and taking advantage of his disposition, evil-minded associates implicated him in a conspiracy to kill his father and grab the throne. Infuriated by Harsha's conduct, his father decided to imprison him and deprive him of the royal succession. Towards the end of his life, King Kala Shah installed his younger son, Utkar Shah, the ruler of Kashmir. After Utkar Shah was crowned, he kept Harsha in prison and refused to grant him the option to leave the kingdom and retire abroad. With his diplomacy, Harsha secured help from his prison guards and his half-brother, Vijay Malla, who raised an open rebellion and attacked King Utkar Shah. After being defeated and humiliated, Utkar Shah committed suicide. In the midst of the prevailing chaos and confusion, Harsha seized the power and became the king of Kashmir. Utkar Shah ruled the valley for a total of 22 days. Harsha, who attained the royal power at a young age after most experiencing sudden changes of fortune, is undoubtedly the most striking figure among the later Hindu rulers of Kashmir. His many and varied attainments and the strange contrast in his character must have greatly influenced the minds of his contemporaries. We see these impressions duly reflected in the elaborate description of Harsha's character, which Gulhan gives us in Rajasthan. Gulhana's description is based on first-hand information, such as that given by his own father, Ganpaka, who himself was a minister of the royal court of King Kala Shah. Gulhana depicts King Harsha as a youthful and powerful personality and a great personal beauty, courageous and fond of display. He was well versed in various sciences and lover of music and art. The songs which he composed were still very popular in Gulhana's days. Rajasthanagini, in an eloquent passage, emphasizes the strongly contrasting quality of Harsha's mind in equally strong contrast in his actions. He was cruel yet kind-hearted, liberal yet greedy, cunning and thoughtless. These apparently incompatible features in turn display themselves in Harsha's strange life. In Rajasthanagini, Gulhana hits the keynote in Harsha's character when he insists on the excessiveness with which all these qualities asserted themselves in Harsha's actions. It is said that modern psychologists could easily gather from Gulhana's account of Harsha's character and rate that Harsha suffered from a kind of dementia. At the commencement of his rule, Harsha exhibited wise forbearance in retaining many of his father's officials and trusted servants, notwithstanding their former conduct towards himself. It was probably due to this prudent policy in the beginning that when his brother Vijayamala became disgruntled and conspired against Harsha, no dangerous uprising followed. Vijayamala had to seek refuge far away across the mountains, where he was soon killed by an avalanche. This event consolidated Harsha's position. Rajasthanagini provides a glowing account of the splendor of Harsha's court during the period immediately following his coronation. Harsha started his rule in a remarkable way and became famous in northern India. His court was a center of luxury and splendor. He introduced new fashions in dress and ornaments. His ministers were gorgeously dressed, wore earrings and headdresses, which previously only members of the ruling family wore. Harsha also issued new silver and gold coins which bore his name. From indications given by Gulhana, it may be concluded that Kashmir did enjoy a brief period of unusual affluence and prosperity in the beginning of Harsha's rule. Several expeditions that Hausha took limits to his dissipations only served to progressively decay his own energy. His personal expedition to invade Rajapuri, a neighboring territory, failed because of treason from one of his trusted officers named Sunam. An expedition to the fort of Dugdadatta failed due to early fall of September, and the royal forces were forced to retreat. Simultaneously attacked by the Dugs, Hausha's retreating forces ended the expedition more disastrously. At this event, Uchala and Susala, the two sons of Malla, who were descendants from a side branch of the Luhara dynasty and destined to succeed Hausha, first came to prominence by the personal bravery they displayed during this attack on Hausha's forces. The extravagant expenditures in the army and senseless indulgence in costly pleasures gradually put Hausha in deep financial troubles. To free himself of these troubles, Hausha decided to amass the silver and gold reserves of the temples and sacred shrines to restore his depleted treasury. It was the incidental discovery of treasures hoarded at the temple of King Bhima Sahib that turned Hausha's attention to this method of replenishing his treasury. After the temple treasure was ransacked, Hausha began confiscating the divine images in order to acquire the valuable metal of which they were made.
Kalana records the strange fact that as a first step, the sacred images were systematically defiled through outcast beggars. For these shameful acts, Kalana nicknamed Hausha Turksha, or Muslim. Hausha destroyed both Hindu and Buddhist temples, and is credited with creating an office of Deva Patana Nayaka, meaning destroyer of gods. In Kalana's time, Buddhism was flourishing in Kashmir, and was not yet considered a distinct religion from Hinduism. However, with careful analysis of all the available literature, it appears that Hausha was definitely only looting temples for gold and not for ideological reasons.
Hausha's court was a center of luxury, extravagance, follies, and misdeeds, which financially strapped his kingdom. To replenish his depleted treasury, in addition to robbing the temples of their treasures, he imposed special taxes on the land and other property. Kalpana cites numerous shameful acts of Hausha that furnish unmistakable proof of the king's insanity. These calamities combined with Hausha's misrule led eventually to an uprising under his arch enemies, the two royal princes, Uchala and Susala. As recorded in Rajadagini, the year 1099 brought natural calamities upon the land. A plague was raging, robbers were looting the people, and a flood occurred, which resulted in famine and universal suffering. The fiscal exactions of the king, however, continued unabated. It was probably to divert the attention of people from suffering that Hausha proceeded to a relentless persecution of the Devatas, the feudal landlords, throughout the valley who had become rebellious. Kalpana records revolting details of the cruelties perpetrated by Hausha on the Devata. To meet unforeseen contingencies, Hausha opened a new leaf in the annals of Kashmir. Up to this time, the kings of Kashmir relied solely upon their Hindu soldiers, but Hausha enlisted Muslims and organized the army in a new model. Each group of 100 soldiers was placed under the charge of a Muslim commander, thus making it impossible for his soldiers to hatch plots or run away from the battle. In Rajadagini, Kalpana writes that Hausha's son named Boja set out for battle in order to burn Kalashan to the ground. The army of Susala was defeated by Prince Boja. However, during the rebellion of Devatas, Prince Boja reached Hastigatna with 2 or 3 horsemen. While thus traveling, he felt confident that their kingdom would be protected even if Lord Indra were their enemy. He waited at Rangavata for his servant, to whom his mother gave provision for the journey. Hearing of his servant's approach, he came out of the empty temple where he was living, suspecting nothing. But he was attacked by the rebels. When the treason was discovered, the prince bravely fought, killed the enemy, but he lost his life too. The relentless persecution of the Maharas by Hausha inspired them to hatch new plots and open negotiations with Hausha his other arch enemies, Uchala and Sulam. Harsha's misrule accelerated this process. Avoiding the open plain where the king's troops could assert their superiority, the Namadas under Uchala began marching across the mountains into the capital. They attacked the capital and burnt the palace. Amidst the confusion and disillusionment, open desertion and treason became rampant among the army and royal attendants. Elhana gives a pathetic description of the unfortunate king's flight from the city by night in the pouring rain. The end of Harsha. Supporters of Uchala attacked the king, and in a mendicant's hut where the king was spending the night and murdered him. Rajadhanani tells us that Harsha died in the Kashmirian era in 77 on the 5th day of the bright moon in the mountain of Badra, aged 42 years and 8 months. After the fall of Harsha, Uchala mounted the throne with the help of the Vimanas. Elhana, in closing his account of Harsha's tragedy, gives us the king's horoscope and explains how it foretold that Harsha would become a destroyer of his own family. In conclusion, Harsha was the king of Kashmir from 1089 to 1101, who came to power through a coup while in prison. He was a poet, versed in many languages, and a lover of music and art. However, he was a mix of contradictory values, both cruel, compassionate, liberal, narrow-minded, clever, and cunning. To meet unforeseen contingencies, Harsha opened a new leaf in the annals of Kashmir. He enlisted Muslim soldiers in his army. Each group of 100 soldiers was placed under the charge of a Muslim commander in order to prevent mutiny. Harsha started off as a capable and noble king, but soon ran into financial troubles because of spending habits. To restore his fortunes, Harsha embarked upon a policy of extreme taxation and looting temples. This naturally created a great deal of resentment. The Vimanas often rose in rebellion, but the king crushed them with great ruthlessness. They finally successfully ruled against the king, ending his life and thus the reign of King Harsha. For this presentation, we used 5 references. The first one was M.A. Stein's translation of Gulliver's Travels. The second is the book Pura Kashmiri Funds, written by Bansi Pandit. Third is Islamic Iconoclasm in Kashmir by Rajni Kakir. Next, A History of Kashmiri Pandits by G.L. Gillam. And finally, A History of Kashmir by P.N.K. Bamsai. Thank you.
Hello and namaskar. My name is Vidya Dar. I will be entering 11th grade this September, and I live in East Brunswick, New Jersey. I always had a curiosity about my Indian background, especially my Kashmiri background. When I heard about this project, I saw it as an opportunity to explore my Kashmiri culture and learn about it once and for all. Throughout the course of researching Lalit Aditya, I learned many things regarding his accomplishments outside Kashmir. Not only how he defied the stereotype of Kashmiri pundits typically not being belligerent, but also how little his story is known within India and not widely taught in schools. I was also surprised to learn that the Maidan Temple is not a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I understand that it's being cared for by the Indian government, but I feel that it's generally been neglected by the people who should be taking care of it. I think that if we get it to be designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, we can preserve it and keep a part of our culture alive and well for the future generations of Kashmiri Pandits. Namaskar. Today I'm going to tell you the story of a brave, courageous, and handsome king. This story is about me. My name is Lalita Vidya Mustafila. I've been described as one of the fiercest and most ambitious rulers of the Karakota dynasty of Kashmir. I'm several centuries old now, so I'll do my best to recount the events of my rule. I'll mostly be relying on Pandit Kalpan's account, the Raj Tarangani, to help me remember my long history of conquest. The Karakota dynasty spanned 600 years, from 252 to 852 CE. I ruled from 724 to 760 CE. It is said that I was born in 699 CE to my well-respected father, Durlabhaka Prasapaditya, and my loving mother, Narendra Prabha. After the rule of my two elder brothers, Chandrapida and Darapida, I ascended the throne at the young age of 25. My dream was Big Vijay, to conquer the world.
At this moment in time, I had many opponents in the fight for global domination. Empires were growing and falling all around the world. For example, Emperor Leo III of the Byzantine Empire had just taken the throne. The Middle East saw the overthrow of Marwan II, resulting in the end of the Umayyad Caliphate. The Ghana Empire was established in West Africa. Arabian armies defeated the Chinese Tang Dynasty troops in the Battle of Talas, thus conquering Central Asia completely. I had some tough competition, but that did not scare me. Not one bit. For my first challenge, I was faced with Tibetan Empire and their tribal invaders. I knew that our armies were not strong enough to face each foe. Even a strong warrior needs to know how to ask for help sometimes. So I requested assistance from the Chinese Tang Dynasty in 736 CE. Unfortunately, they were not willing to help my cause. Instead, I called upon my neighbor, Yashovarman, king of Peru, who was also dealing with the Tibetan threat. We struck up a deal, a solemn promise to rid India of these invaders. With a new ally by my side, I charged into battle with the full force of my army, and I defeated them one by one. The Tibetans, Bukharas, Garadas, and Kambojas. Never again would the Tibetans even think of fighting against me. Now I had control over Kutch, Urban, Assam, and Bangladesh. With the Tibetans gone, this left was two great powers in India, Yashovarman and myself. It was clear that India simply was not big enough for the both of us. Relations were troubling. As a last resort, our ministers brought us together to sign a peace treaty. However, one of Yashovarman's servants made the grave mistake of placing his name before mine in the treaty. This was absolutely unacceptable. It was a sign of utter disrespect that I simply could not ignore. So what did I do? Well, I taught Yashovarman a lesson. A lesson that ended in his defeat. By the end of my conflict with Yashovarman, I gained the territories of Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Uttar Pradesh. I even received Yashovarman's most famous court poets, Bhagwati, Rajashri, and Bhavavati, the author of Malki Malava. I now concentrated my efforts on consolidating power on the Indian subcontinent. It was a long but victorious journey. First, I marched east towards Kalinga and conquered the people of Magadha, Gauda, and Kamarupa. They all submitted to me. I reached the eastern sea and followed the coast south. There I happened upon a kingdom ruled by a woman, where all of the subjects were women. This queen, Rafi, also submitted to me, with an expression of either anger or admiration. It was difficult to tell which. I went on to take Dakkan, Karnataka, and Dwarka. I allowed my army to rest on the banks of the Kaveri River at
and drink the sweet wine of peace. At this point, I began to head west. I attacked the haughty kings of the south, who underestimated my power. Because of their arrogance, I gained a monkey after crossing the hills of India. We discovered the land of Kumbhaka, the land of the finest horses. And you know me, I just had to help myself. With my new horses, I made my way up the western coast of India. As I approached North Kuru, the people, upon hearing my name, fled to the mountains. At last, I returned home, having collected vast riches and added many new territories to my empire. It's no wonder people call me the Alexander of India. My remaining threat came from the west in the form of Arab invaders. Time and time again, the Arabs had tried to conquer India. This one chap in particular, Muhammad, the ruler of Bukhara, had the nerve to wage war against me 4 times. However, the 4th time was the last, as he met my armies outfitted with the latest Tang Dynasty armor. The defeat was so resounding that the Arabs gave up the idea of invading India for centuries. I continued further into their territory, capturing Dargistan, Turkestan, and Transoxiana, which is current-day Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. I soon discovered that Hindus were being mistreated in the Afghan region, so I quickly conquered the Afghans as well. I ordered the vanquished to shave half the hair off their heads as a symbol of their submission to me. At last, missing my wife and children, I decided to return home. I poured all of the riches my kingdom received from my underlings into beautifying all of Kashmir. I commissioned many temples so that I could give thanks to the gods for my successful conquest. I made a temple in every town, village, river, sea, and island. I built the most famous temple, the Martan temple, within just 10 years. I dedicated this temple to the sun god, Surya. It sits on top of a plateau in Anantnag, with a beautiful view of the entire Kashmir Valley beneath it. I blended many styles of architecture to create this masterpiece, such as Gandhara, Gupta, Roman, and Greek. It was a beautiful temple, complete with intricate carvings, sweeping arches, and majestic columns. My men and I poured so much blood, sweat, and tears into this temple, only to have Sikandar Sikand destroyed. But let me tell you this, he struggled immensely with the task. He could not at all demolish the mammoth stone temple. As a last resort, a fire was started to heat the stone. Then cold water was sprinkled on the stones, causing them to crack. The Sikandar continued to burn it, and in 13 months, he was finally satisfied. When he dug up the foundation of the temple, a copper plate was discovered, which had the following inscription. Having built this temple, Maharaja was desirous of ascertaining from his astrologers how long it would last, and was informed by them that in 1100 years, a king named Sikandar were destroyed, as well as the other temples in Kashmir. Imagine the look on Sikandar's face when he saw that. That's right. I knew from the beginning that the temple would only last for 1100 years, and that Sikandar would be the one to destroy it. I also commissioned a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva called the Naranam Temple. It is presently located in the Gandharbal district of Kashmir. I took very good care of my subjects. I made sure that the poor never starved. I built a permanent home for the poor where I handed out food, water, and clothing daily. I founded many towns in honor of my expedition. In every place I conquered, I put a monument to celebrate my victory. I created Manishkipura, the city of certainty, because I was certain of my victory on the battlefield. When I took pride in my conquest, I created Darfur, the city of pride. I celebrated the fruits of my labor by establishing Pura, the city of fruit, located in modern-day Natashka and Sindhu. I made towns in the middle of the desert so that travelers would not die of thirst. While I was out conquering, my viceroy built and named a town after me, called Lalitpura, which I did not like. The town I am most proud of, however, was my capital of Harinhaspura, which I preferred over Srinagar. Some have said that my abode was even better than that of Indira. In it, I placed a magnificent silver image of Vishnu named Sri Parihasa Keshava, and an image in gold called Sri Mukta Keshava. I used over 80,000 tolas of gold for this task. I had an idol of Buddha that reached up to the sky. I had jewels and riches beyond imagination, which is just the kind of life you can live when you conquered the world. Now, you might be wondering how I did it all. Well, good question. Just between us, I have superpowers. It was said that in a past life, I had generously given my food and water to a hungry Brahmin during a famine. And for this, I was granted 100 wishes. One time, I was in the desert for 15 days without water. However, this did not affect me. A sound of thunder reverberated through the town as I began to dig my spear into the desert sand. Water leapt to the surface, and soon enough, a river began to flow. I had created the Kurtavahini River. Now, how cool is that? It is unclear to history exactly how I met my end, but there are 3 theories. I may have died in battle from a sudden avalanche in eastern Iran. Or maybe I immolated myself upon hearing about the defeat of my army in the hopes of dying a noble death. Or I may have lived out the rest of my life in solitude after so much conquering blood. Well, one thing is for sure. I will never tell.
Hello. Thank you for patiently and quietly watching the presentations. We have an announcement from Shakunji, and then after that we have to play a video, a movie, and then after that we're going to be playing the rest of the videos which have been submitted while people eat lunches. So, thank you.
Okay, namaskar. I hope you are all awake. I'm sure you are. Wonderful presentations. Thank you, Umesh, for putting this together. Please put a big hand for Umesh. He really worked hard at it. I didn't work for that. So we were going to play a movie, Last Smile, in amphitheater, but looking at our crowd, it only holds 75 people. I think we are more than 75. So we have changed the venue and we're going to play the movie here. So please try to stay here, and this is a very important